When I first started decluttering, I had trouble gaining momentum. I did a lot of thinking and not a lot of doing. It was kind of like, that feeling when you wake up in the morning and you just don't feel like getting out of bed. Maybe you're still really tired and your alarm went off. Maybe you even kind of have to use the bathroom, but somehow that isn't even motivation enough to get you out of bed. You still just spend an extra 5 to 10 minutes lying there thinking about getting out of bed. Well, that's how I kind of felt about decluttering. I was stagnant. I was stuck. And honestly, I think a lot of us deal with this. I mean, we have busy lives, we have lots to be worried about, and sometimes decluttering just isn't at the top of our lists. But what's funny is that doing declutters can make such a profound impact on your life, on how difficult your day-to-day tasks are, maneuvering around your home, getting things done. If you have a bunch of stuff, it just makes it harder and take longer. And also just on a psychological level, I feel like decluttering and streamlining a space just reduces stress for me. And I know there's some research to support that idea that clutter actually can contribute to stress. So today I want to share, in my opinion, the top 2 ways you can break that barrier and get started with decluttering. I know these are both approaches I've used and they've really helped harness my motivation and made a huge difference in my quality of life. Basically, these are the best ways to get high yield declutters so that you see that impact quickly and want to keep doing it. The first approach is to tackle the areas in your home first that would make the biggest impact on your quality of life if they were decluttered. What's the area in your space that bothers you the most, that kind of gets you stressed out or gets you frustrated with your life? And the answer might be different for different people. So some people might say the living room because that's where I spend the most time and that's where I notice the clutter the most. For others, it might be the storage facility that's hidden away but has been giving them anxiety for years. For me, when I first started, I started with clothing declutters because I noticed that my closet was so jam-packed that it was overwhelming to get ready in the morning, and it took all the joy out of dressing myself. Plus, then I was always overwhelmed with massive loads of laundry, and I just had heaps of clothes all over my space. So that was a high-yield place to start for me. If I made that change, it could impact my life, which it did. A second factor to consider in getting started is to get started with what is easiest to you. But just take a moment to reflect on where you could start decluttering that wouldn't feel so overwhelming. Because sometimes that struggle with initiation is just feeling overwhelmed by all the stuff and what a hard job it's going to be. So often I blow decluttering up in my mind as this really difficult, arduous, unpleasant process that will take me a lot of time. But quite often, if I actually step back and look at how long it took me or how I felt through the process, it actually ended up being fairly fun, or it was pretty quick, maybe even just 20 minutes or an hour. So examples might be, maybe it's something small, like just clearing out a desk drawer and making that change today. Maybe it's something that feels fun to you, like going through your wardrobe and your clothing, or going through your jewelry, or going through your books. Pick something that might bring you some joy to sift through. And what's smart about this too is sometimes leaving the harder tasks for later can also help you build that decluttering muscle so that when you get to the hard stuff, you're ready for it. For example, sometimes leaving memorabilia or things wrapped up in emotions or relationships or history can be difficult to declutter, and you might want to handle those later on when you're a little bit more comfortable with decluttering. Do what feels not so intimidating to you. Reduce the friction in your life, make it easier on yourself, and just take that first step. Because if you can just take that first step, then maybe you can take a second and a third, and before you know it, you're running. Because once you do a little bit, you start to see the payoff. And then that just kind of ricochets and ripples, and gradually you just look around and you're like, my space is so much more streamlined than it would have been if I hadn't done that. And that's something I also have to remind myself. Sometimes I do still have some clutter and too much stuff, but then I think back to how much worse it was and how much worse it would be at this point if I hadn't done those declutters. And I think it's important to give yourself a pat on the back for that progress and to really savor that progress, appreciate it, to kind of self-reinforce and encourage yourself to keep going. Because if you appreciate that progress, you'll be, again, that much more likely to get back out there and to do more decluttering. Like, I want to always be growing as a person, and if I don't have the time or space to do that, and if my stuff is holding me back from that, that's a problem. And so I do think that making these little changes along the way can end up having rippling effects on your life. So I just want to send that message that you can do it. You don't have to start big. You can start with something that feels fun or easy, and over time, you will see a big difference. The last thing I want to mention also is that I in no way want to have my channel be about guilt or shame around decluttering, because we have enough guilt or shame in today's society, and I don't want to add to that. Like, I am somebody that still deals with clutter and stuff. Initiating is hard, and so I want to acknowledge that. And if you're interested in that concept of shame and reducing shame around decluttering, I did make a recent video on that topic, so I'll link that above and below in case you want to watch that next. Anyway, thank you so much for spending this little bit of time with me, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.